Smoothie King asks, what's that sound? That's the sound of hearts popping out of your eyes when you see Smoothie King's all-new smoothie bowls. These Power Pack beauties are just waiting to be spooned. Our smoothie bowls start with acai or pitaya and are handcrafted with fresh toppings like sliced bananas, sweet berries, ripe mangoes, crunchy Purely Elizabeth granola, and a savory peanut butter drizzle. That's the sound of a smoothie bowl being made fresh, just for you. The new Smoothie Bowls menu, only at Smoothie King.
Hey, what's up? It is the ManFUzed Podcast. We are back. This is Kay Lee, your host, my co-host, Ben H., a.k.a. Mr. Real Estate, riding next to me. So today on the ManFUzed Podcast, Ben H. is going to offer up some real estate advice to a good friend of ours who's dealing with a slumlord who has neglected and refused to fix a black mold issue that has been growing and festering for over 15 years. Now this asshole is trying to jack up the rent and still not fix the issue. What's the play here? Does the slumlord have a legal obligation to fix that issue? Can we use this as a negotiating tactic to acquire the building for cheap? I have all types of ideas running through my head. Ben H. will probably bring me down to reality. My buddy, an amazingly talented tattoo artist. You might have seen if you've ever watched Ink Masters. His name is Craig Foster. Yep. He has provided me with the 2 sleeves I have on my arm. He is the godfather of my son, Kai. He is an amazing artist, an amazing guy, coolest motherfucker ever, one of my best friends. Well, we used to work together at Psycho Tattoo, as I've said, when I first got a job there. He was one of the tattoo artists that was working there, and we have a very long, rich history of friendship. Well, his mom had moved to a town or a city here in Georgia called Carrollton, and I think his mom at some point needed some help. God rest, she is now passed, rest in peace. She was a great woman. A lot of time spent with her. But he moved down to Carrollton, Georgia to be close to her and help her out in whatever way she needed. He decided at that point that he was going to open up his very own tattoo shop, which he did, and it's called Skinworks, and it presides there today. I am the real estate agent on that deal. So I don't remember if he found the building or we found it together, but it was listed at the time. I represented him in his first contract on that lease.
Yep.
The contract, I believe at the time, I'd have to even look, was a 3 to 4 year contract at, a rate of whatever it was. It has now been 16 years. They have never re-signed a new lease because I believe at the end of 3 or 4 years, the owner, who has now passed away as well, and his son has taken over the real estate empire. I haven't checked his real estate portfolio as of late, but it was pretty extensive.
Yeah.
They own a lot of damn property. And from what you can tell, they're pretty damn wealthy. I believe after 3 to 4 years, I think contract was in place, but now goes month to month. So typically when a contract does end on a lease, if neither party presses for another signed contract, it's understood
that
it
just keeps going.
It just keeps going on a month-to-month basis. I believe the seller has to give the renter 90 days to vacate from that point if they want them out, and the renter needs to tell the landlord, hey, here's your 60-day notice. Typical.
It's
on
whatever the contract says.
Yeah, I believe that's what I had put in there. Anyway.
Yeah.
So over the years, first off, has never done anything to the building. Craig had brought up on multiple occasions that some things needed to be addressed, and it was just ignored. Craig put in a new AC unit. He just said, fuck it, and he started making vast improvements to this guy's property, and this guy had not done anything to it. Over the years, would come in and tell Craig, hey, we need to increase the rent, because normally when you stay at a property, just like anything, rates increase. Property values go up, rental rates go up. We're going to need to make some adjustments if you want to keep renting here. But that normally is a negotiating point.
Yes.
Because typically when your landlord wants to raise the rents, there's probably some issues that you could negotiate to have fixed in that new contract.
Right.
Well, for the past 16 years, there has been an unaddressed, pointed out on multiple occasions, there is a severe mold and structural issue in the basement. To the point that when he would come in to not demand, but bring up the fact of increasing the rents, my buddy, Craig, the renter, would go, well, let's go downstairs in the basement because you have seemed to have forgotten that there is an extensive mold issue in the basement, which is kind of unfinished, but nonetheless a health hazard, if I'm not mistaken. And at that point would go, you know what? Let's forget about the rent increase because the cost to not only fix the water issue, which is creating the mold, but then to get mold remediation on top of that. I don't know that he's had anybody look into it, but if you're a real estate owner or anybody in that business, that could be a very expensive
big time
fix. You're talking, depending on how big the issue is, and I'm no expert, but if I had to guess by looking at the amount of it, 50, 70 grand. Structural issues where they've got to dig down to the foundation and make big repairs because water is seeping in through the brick in the basement or the concrete, big issue.
100%.
So fast forward 16 years later, no rent increase. Now my buddy has made attempts multiple times to buy this building because, you know, he's put a lot of money into it.
Right.
And even with the owner before he died, yeah, I'll sell it to you. But then when the contract came, I remember us writing a contract for it, but the owner's idea of what value he was going to place on the property was far away from what I believe the value was.
Right.
And they never had it appraised. It never made it to that point. So here we are today. The owner's son has been, I'm not going to say harassing, but has been coming in basically saying, I want to raise the rent by $500. And I believe the owner's son now is looking at it and going, okay, well, this never had a rent increase. Here's the deal. It needs to be at this amount. Where my buddy is like, I don't have a problem paying that 500 extra bucks a month. But every window is rotted out at the windowsill. Every window needs to be replaced in this building. This building is old. There is a mold issue which has been ignored over and over. And he's pressing Craig to sign a new lease. Well, now his tactics have gone next level. So he contacts Craig, and now he's saying, for a buying price, he's saying that he wants $425,000 for this building.
Right.
Which there's no way in fucking hell. And not with the remediation that needs to be done.
Yeah.
There are buildings that are similar that have been sold for $325,000. So if you want to take that and let's say those have no issues, new windows added on this mold, that's $100K easy. He's got $25,000-$30,000, and it's a commercial property. You're going to pay more for windows.
Yes.
He needs to get this building for like $200,000. So the new owner has resorted to, now he's bringing in other real estate agents to show the property.
For $400?
He's not saying. And I don't know if this is a tactic to get my buddy to go, I better sign the contract if I want to stay here. Personally, I told him, I said, first off, I don't think any new tenant is going to come in here and pay what he's asking with the issues in the basement. It hasn't been appraised and it hasn't been officially inspected.
Right.
Going on what I know, like, I'm not an idiot.
Right.
But my question is this. So now my buddy Craig is actually looking for a new property. First off, I wouldn't pay that. He's been a tenant for 16 years, paying rent on time every month, making improvements. He should get that building at a fucking bargain, in my opinion. He's not the owner. But here's my question, Ben. So now he's taking these tactics, and I don't know if he really is trying to put another tenant in there or trying to sell the building. My buddy Craig said, listen, you want 4.25, the appraisal is going to have to be approved for that. And there's no way that appraisal is going to come in. I said, Craig, wouldn't it be funny? You're a landlord. You have emails that you have sent his father and him talking about the unhealthy mold that has continued to grow for 16 years beneath your feet.
Right.
OSHA would probably shut that fucking place down. What health hazards could you have been exposed to over the last 16 years? And that's not a tenant issue. I told my attorney about the situation, and mold makes my attorney horny. Mold gives my attorney an erection like you've never believed. He is so happy right now.
Right.
I have made his year.
The question is, what's the end goal? We have to start with what he wants and work backwards from there. You could do something like that with the mold, and ultimately he still has the right to remove you from the property as a tenant. You may try to sue him, but you agreed to continue to pay rent. The question is, are you looking for a dogfight, or is there a goal? Does it help us reach a goal? One way that you can do it is you can take the 425. You can get a mold remediation company out there to do a full quote. You can get a window company out there to quote new windows. You can get a roof company out there to quote a new roof.
Structural engineer.
You can get all these people out there, and, it costs you a couple grand to do it, but you try to find, inspectors that aren't going to charge you, but ultimately it'll cost you a little bit of money at the end of the day. Get the HVAC inspected. Get everything inspected just like you would if you were going to buy the building. Then make an offer for what you feel is a fair price, and also include that there's a tabulated amount here for everything that would need to be done in order to bring this building into not only a safe condition, it's got to be secure, it's got to be
comparable to other properties that
it needs to be all those things. That's how I would proceed if I was him. I would probably get somebody like, Ben H. or Kay Lee to compile a list of comps.
I sent you the address.
And I've already compiled a list of comps. Compile a list of quotes and to create a proposition which includes a CMA, a list of repairs to be done, and an offer on the property, and a pre-qualification letter from a lender. And I would make it an offer, and I'd just submit it. If the guy turns it down, or if he comes back, or whatever he does, and he says no, okay, and they can't, if they can work out a deal, great, they can work out a deal. If they can't work out a deal, okay, fine, then what does that mean for me renting this property? Am I out in 60 days? Am I out in 90 days? Since I know I can't buy it now, how much time do I have to go find a new space and get out of here? Right. And then begin that process. But I wouldn't do that until I made an informed offer. Maybe he's got some kind of contention with the guy. A person like me has no contention. I want to get a deal done. Hey, Mr. Seller, let me help you here.
Let me ask you a question, and you probably can't answer this, because now that I look at and I think about it, what would OSHA say if OSHA came in and saw the amount of black mold in this basement? You've got 1,750 square feet being used on the main floor, and you have an equal 1,750 square feet. The front's underground.
He could get out of his lease.
Well, there is. It's a month to month.
Deposit back.
It's a month to month. But
no, I know. But he could leave. They'd be like, "Hey, you can leave. Under law, you can leave." He can leave with no strings attached.
Oh, why? Because of the mold issue.
If they come in there and they see the property, they're just going to require the guy that owns it to repair it.
Whoever buys it needs to. If they're smart, they're going to make money on the deal. You should be able to pick something like that up that has $100K worth of fucking repairs, not little repairs. We're not talking about an AC unit.
Sometimes the best deals that you do are the ones that you don't do. That's our boy DT. And then the other quote from DT is, you should always protect the downside by buying the property right. Protect your downside not by budgeting repairs. You don't buy high-end budget repairs. You have to buy it right.
Right.
And so Craig has to determine for him what does that look like? What is buying it right? There's got to be a line that's drawn to which Craig's not going to pay any more, and he's going to go find a new place to put his business.
Right.
So that we can determine what that number is, make an offer to the seller, a real offer to the seller for that number, and explain why. And if the answer is no, come up with a plan to move forward on a different strategy sooner than later.
Right. No, right.
What's going to happen is somebody's going to put it under contract. They're going to tie it up, because you can tie it up for nothing if you know what you're doing.
Right.
You can tie it up for nothing.
They're going to give
and it's going to stipulate that the tenant has to be out before closing.
I believe they're going to have to give him 90 days regardless of whatever contract it says.
Okay, fine. So they got to give him 90 days. So why don't we make one of the contracts his contract? If he can tie it up, that eliminates any other buyer, because the seller can't terminate.
Right.
So it's in his interest to tie it up if he wants to keep it. If he doesn't want to keep it, then, it's...
I just wonder now, even let's just say, fuck it. What if 5 years from now, the result of breathing in black mold spores creates health issues? And this issue has been pointed out for 16 years with nothing ever done. And granted, I guess you could say, well, the tenant didn't have to stay there, but it was always swept under the rug. And I would believe you would have a lawsuit.
Potentially, that's the plaintiff. But the defendant is going to say, look, we had an arm's length transaction with the tenant. They were aware, and we gave them the opportunity to leave, and they decided to stay. They are the ones who even brought these things to our attention.
You probably could also argue a good attorney, and I could be wrong because we're not attorneys, but that's a health hazard. Whether he's in there or not, having a property that you are leasing out to the public that has those issues, and whether it be Craig or the next person or whatever, is a fucking problem.
The big problem with mold is when it comes to disclosure. We see disclosure in the emails. Mm-hmm. So the point is that he was aware. He was aware during the last however many years.
Right.
And again, to what extent, if you lose, you got to pay your attorney and everybody else's.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then if you win, what does that look like? What does the win look like?
Man,
we know what the loss looks like.
What's the maximum potential?
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Right,
what are we trying to win?
I just want to fuck with him at this point.
For how much money?
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I said,
how much
Craig,
money you want to blow?
I said, Craig, do you not have an attorney that you tattoo that would be like, oh yeah, I'll send him a letter?
Sure, if you can do something like that, but ultimately, again, sometimes
some fights
our challenges are our opportunities. This may push him into moving his location and entering a different stratosphere of whatever he sees his business doing, whatever that looks like for his business. This could be an opportunity for him to get out of the place he's been for the last 16 years and maybe do something next level that he's always dreamed of doing.
Move it down to a little bit of a better area.
Sure, if that's what he wants to do, and that could blow his business up, and then he could look back and say, man, thank goodness that all happened.
Perfect.
Because if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
And so it's my way of doing things is to just let it be. Mm-hmm. Be kind, be understanding, be whatever. Make the guy an offer. If he says no to your offer, move on.
When one door opens or shuts, another one opens. All right, this is the ManFUzed Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Out.